This one, for the placement of large data centers, energy is now a more important factor than proximity to population. We talked about this in 2016, I believe. Was it 2016? Yes, Dubai. And we ruled this one plausible. That's because we didn't have a lot of data at our disposal at that moment. I'm going to show you a few anecdotal things, first of all. This is a map of all data centers that we know of. This is about 5,000. Each dot is an individual data center. Now, let's talk about where the large data centers are. Some of the largest are, in terms of power and space, are run by Meta and Google. Let's take a look at where they are. Some of them adhere to kind of where the blue dots are, which roughly match where the human population is. However, if you look, there's some curious placement choices. Northern Sweden, Finland, even in the United States, there's a lot in the central part of the United States where the population is not very high. So already you can sort of see that there's some curious choices here if these large data centers were trying to find where the population is. Well, it turns out we have developed some new data at telegeography. This is something we call the market connectivity score. And if you're nerdy about geography like us, or you want to know about telecom investment, good places, locations for investment, this might be of interest to you. I'm happy to describe it afterwards. But basically, it's a matrix of 3,000 different cities, and for each city, columns of data for 36 different data. Some telecom, some demographic, some about energy. What we're going to do today, though, is we're going to pull two pieces of data that will help us measure this myth. One is city population. For every data center, we're going to look at the population in a 100-kilometer radius around that data center. And for energy, we're going to choose the indicator that is in a radius around that data center, how much power is generated that is clean energy, which is another factor of importance for the largest data center operators. Okay, here's kind of our control group. This is the typical third-party colo operator that's been in business for 30 years or more. And you can see here's their average population for all their data centers. Here's the average, weighted average population in a 100-kilometer radius around those. Here's cloud operators, which is sort of in between the really large providers, because they do have to care about humans. They care more about the businesses that are serving the humans. Population, on average, is a little bit lower. Now, here are some of the largest content data center operators, the content providers, and you can see there's a marked difference here in the population. Also, a little bit in the clean power that's generated in those cities, not necessarily available to the data centers, but in general around them. But this is anecdotal. This doesn't prove anything. So let's go to a scatter plot of all data centers that are above a certain threshold. I think it's 500,000 square feet. Okay, if the data centers were following human population, you would kind of think that the largest data centers would be in the most populated areas, right? So there would be a positive correlation there. But look what we're seeing here. For the independent variable here is population, but the dependent is the square footage of the data centers, individual data centers. Each dot is a data center. And there's a negative correlation there. What about green energy or clean energy? Well, here's a positive correlation. It's a little less dramatic, but you can see the cleaner in the proximity to the cleaner of energy in the proximity to a data center, the larger the data center. Here at the bottom, the data is a little bit confused, but there's almost a suggestion of a linear relationship for the very largest data centers. So, for this myth, the placement of large data centers, energy is now more important than proximity to population. I think we have enough data now to say there's a negative correlation between data center size and population, positive correlation, data center size, and clean power availability. So we're going to say this one is actually, we're going to move this from plausible to confirmed.